The public meeting of the City of Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board is now called to order at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, June 17, 2025. The board members are present here at the Tallahassee Room in the City Hall, along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Board's website, and we are recording it for future reference. There is a delay in the online communications, and we should all be patient. As always, we thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. We asked the public to email ethics@talgov.com if they wish to speak online on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their name will be allowed to speak as scheduled. While the meeting is in progress, please do not speak during the board's discussion. We have set aside 2 places on the agenda for the public to speak. For those who wish to make a public comment, please complete a speaker request form and forward it to Administrative Specialist, Ms. Tasker Leverson Green. Be sure to state what you wish to speak about on the form. Public speakers will be given up to 3 minutes in accordance with the board's bylaws. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Green, could you please call the roll?
Kirsten Costa,
Online, here.
Patrick Kelly,
Here.
Rika Calhoun, Adam Commissar, Caroline Clanky,
Here.
Mary Ellis David,
Here.
Brian Smith.
Here,
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Mr. Make a note for the record that Mr. Commissar just arrived.
Okay, Mr. Commissar, just arrived.
Any public comment?
No public comments.
No public comment? Okay, I'm going to turn to Director Dwight Floyd for the Ethics Office report.
There. As you know, we did not meet last month because of, well, I'm sorry, we skipped one thing. You want to do approval of the minutes?
Oh, yes, my bad.
No, I'm sorry.
Has everybody read the minutes for the meeting in April? Are there any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve the
moved.
minutes? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Floyd?
Thank you. Chair, this report goes from April 8th through June 10th of this month. It's been a very busy period. We've done a lot of training, a lot of writing training. We'll talk about the writing training shortly. But we delivered training to new employees on more than one occasion. We had the privilege of training to 100 high school students participating in the Tallahassee Future Leadership Academy, another 150 part-time employees for the Department of Parks and Recreations, and firefighters. We continue just today. We finished the annual ethics course. I handed it over to the city. We met with the HR director to discuss collaboration and responsibilities for the annual ethics course, and that was very, very positive, very, very well. John Reed, our legal advisor, and I met with the current city attorney, Amy Coleman, and about to discuss the board recommendations, and we followed that with the meeting with the Deputy Secretary Sikowski of Florida Commission on Ethics to get clarification on some issues. And beyond that, we formed the administrative duties and responded to complaints. The list you see below that are the things that we spent money on. Over a 2-month period, we spent $6,745, and most of that was, some of that was related to training material, and some of that is what we do every month. So nothing special there. You look at our budget, we have a balance remaining of about 188,000 with a projected finishing balance of about 88,000. So we're doing a good job of maintaining the budget, being fiscally responsible, or as I say to Tasker, we're awfully cheap. We don't spend a lot. And I know, I can't help it, so I guess it's a good thing. There were no official ethics complaints. We did receive a number of, I don't see it. Is it, what happened to it? We'll have to bring it next month.
The monthly referral,
Yeah.
that's what you put in
Right. Okay, I gave you the wrong thing. So there is a list of referrals, but they're just referrals, so you'll hear about them when we come back. I won't try to summarize those. And that concludes our report. Any questions?
We should note for the record the presence of Rika Calhoun.
Right. Increase the attendance.
Mm-hmm. I got you wrote down.
1, 2, 3,
Thank you.
4, 5, 6. So everybody's present. Excellent. That feels good. Okay, for the general update, if you haven't filled out your financial disclosure, I want to remind you, you should get reminders from clerk's office, but in addition, just want to make sure we do those on time.
What do they do?
Pardon me?
What do
They're
they do?
July
First.
Yes. And so let's make sure we get those done. And I must confess, I haven't done mine myself. So after today, now that I'm through with this course and I have a life, I'll get it done. Remember that there is no meeting in July. We don't meet in July and December to give you all a break. We'll keep working, but we can breathe a little bit. But there's no meeting in July. And with regards to legislation, there was nothing substantive. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is our general update.
And board recommendations, John?
Yes. If I could maybe just go back, I wanted to chime in on the Form 1. They have a very nice feature this year where you could populate from last year's. You don't have to, I was dreading having to enter all the data again.
Click this button.
And man, it took me 15 minutes to be done, so it was kind of nice. So I just wanted to let you know, if you're dreading it, it's not as bad as it could have been. So, okay, so the recommendations, these have previously been approved by this board. We did want to sit with the city attorney and discuss them with her, see if she had any concerns or recommendations. And we actually had, as Mr. Floyd said, we had a very nice conversation. And we have come back with a couple of changes. If you look at the first one, which is now 24 ORD 03A, everything is the same. The only thing that we did change was in city auditor from the officers. We had inspector general and city auditor for a period of time. I think probably when we started this process, they had both names. They were using both names, but they amended the charter in November. So we're just going to take that out completely because we're no longer using that term. So that is a relatively easy change in the first one. The second, which is the 04A, this is the doing business with conflicting contractual relationship in the exemptions section. It follows state law. in 112.313, I think it's 3, 7, and 12 subsections. We, yes, so we made a couple of changes on, at the very beginning, since we're creating a whole new section, we do need to push back the numbers for the ethics code. So as you see, it crossed out 2-20, adds 2-21. And then beginning on lines 119 and then sprinkled throughout, we've added covered individuals. I think that was the intent of this board, was to cover everyone that we address. But the way it was originally drafted, it was just employees. And so now we cover the covered individuals and the employees, like we do in the misuse. I think we do have, I don't think we have any ordinances where we only address employees and we don't address covered individuals. We do have, like the gift is covered individuals, not employees, but not the other way around. So this just keeps us consistent in that regard and just adds the covered individuals to the list. In lines 171 and 72, 176 and 77, and 186 to 88, we add a spouse or a child related to the covered individuals or city employees to the exemption. That was considered implied, but it'd be better to make it explicit, so we just add covered individual or city employees or their spouse or child. And then the language on 225 to 30, this was a recommendation of the city attorney, and this follows along with state statute somewhere in part 3 of 112, where it says that it's not the intent to prohibit all outside employment. So they wanted to make it, she wanted to make it clear that we're not saying you can't do anything on the outside. You can. So we have that language explicit. We do pull them back to the city policies and say you do need to consider the city policies, because they have the whole outside employment provision in the city policy that we don't want them to overlook. So we do mention the city policy in the suggested change. So those are the new language to you since last time. I think the next move would be to approve to send this to the city commission for consideration.
What did you?
I have a couple of just comments, food for thought. I first, I like the language as proposed, but I did notice that I would be remiss if I didn't say that there's some exemptions we've left out to the conflicts of interest provisions of doing business with your own agency and conflicting employment or contractual relationships. The first of those is in 112.313, subsection 15. It's titled additional exemption, and it was kind of stuffed in there fairly recently. It deals with employees of nonprofit corporations. So you may want to cast your gaze on that. I'm not saying that we need to have it in our code. It's been controversial in the past. In 2022, the legislature actually proposed legislation to sunset it. It didn't pass, but we might want to, I just want to make sure that it's not in the meat and potatoes exemptions that are incorporated in the latter provisions of 112.313.7 or in 112.313.12, where you would normally find them. There's also another exemption of the same ilk in 112.316. It's a so-called equitable exemption, which is dangerous, but it allows for greater flexibility when the proposed activity is of the kind that is kind of articulated in the catch-all. Doesn't involve the person's public capacity responsibilities. They have no authority over it. For example, it's been applied to negate conflicts of interest by the Florida Commission on Ethics when a city employee had a part-time employment capacity position as the cashier of a convenience store that was doing business with the city P card holders and whatnot. She didn't have any public capacity responsibilities over those types of transactions. She was a rank and file city employee. If we don't have that in here, will we similarly be able to allow for equitable circumstances to form the basis of an exemption? I don't want to lose that possibility for lack of contemplation. And, okay, and I had a question. Okay, so there's a appointed board member exemption that is the first exemption in 112-313-12. And it allows for the appointing board to the appointed board to waive by a 2/3 majority vote. We do have that in here, but it doesn't tell you about the mechanism by which that would occur. Do we need any of that information in the language that's in here? What's the thought?
And when you say mechanism, you tell a manner of vote.
Or like there's a specific form that's, been promulgated by the Florida Commission on Ethics for use by boards in effectuating that waiver by the 2/3 majority vote to make sure that there's guidance that the necessary information that's required by that exemption, which is articulated in our language here. It is articulated, it is incorporated in here, but to make sure that, the form itself gives guidance to the person who's on the appointed board to say, this is the information you need to disclose to the appointing authority before they make their 2/3 majority vote to make sure substantively they've considered everything necessary for the waiver to occur. It's been helpful in the past because often appointed board members are just, they don't have a board liaison that's knowledgeable. There's no board attorney oftentimes like we have with John Reed, who's able to give them guidance present at their meetings. So something for contemplation. That is all. I love that it requires self-disclosure of prohibited conflicts of interest. That's just the greatest thing I've ever seen, but.
So it's a question of whether you all think you need it. Or
What are your thoughts, John?
Well, I think we have two issues. One, read the other exemptions, and we could bring this back with that language.
If we want to.
If we want to take a look at it. And then the other one is the form. I don't think the statute references the form, they just have rulemaking authority. So I think we could do it through, we have our administrative procedures, we could put something in the administrative procedures. If we want to reference that in the ordinance, good, do that.
I mean, or we could just decide that what is reflected in the ordinance with respect to that exemption is sufficient to put appointed board members on notice. Those are the types of individuals that frequently do this wrong or not sequentially. The vote happens before they've given the actual disclosure. And complaints that I've heard. And oftentimes it's just a byproduct of the board. I had a question about, it's something we need to consider in.
we give procedures as we go through process.
Yeah, I think because the city commission may say they don't even want to do this, so then we may be putting the cart before the horse. I would think that if the city commission wants to move forward and adopt this, then we could reconvene and amend our administrative procedures and produce the procedures and adopt a form.
So we don't need the form to pass this today.
I don't think we do
How
now.
about any other board members? Any other thoughts on passing as is or any of the issues that was brought up by another member?
I think, right, I think a lot of you bring up excellent points. One, from a state statute perspective, especially as it relates to the equitable treatment of the example that you used with the convenience employee who also works at the city, that is a nuanced exemption that was only really obvious based on an advisory opinion from the commission. It wasn't really obvious from the language. And so having it clear, I think is an excellent point. Where it can be housed, I think I also like the idea of it being housed and kind of elaborated on in the procedures, though, because then you can train on it. So if it's in the procedure, so I have no problem with the language the way it is now and how it's applied and the different exemptions that in which we would interpret the language as it is now, to be added in the procedures and train, and, we could be trained upon it in that way as board members.
Any other thoughts? So if I hear Ms. Calhoun appropriately, what you're talking about, the issue with the person working for the city and working for the convenience store, that could be put into procedure.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be in this opinion that we're passing today.
Right. My thought is that it became more clear based on the interpretation of the commission. And so as we interpret our procedures and how this is going to be applied, I think it can be in the procedures without changing the language. If we decide that that's the way to go, I think that's viable. So I don't have a problem with language the way it is, with the interpretation of how it's going to be applied in the procedures. And then the other issue of the board members, that's an issue of training. And that's something that needs to be in the procedures in the handbook as well, when we would make that, when we would make that disclosure and how we would go about getting that waiver.
It sounds to me like, Dwight, you've got some material for your training, role playing and scenarios going forward.
I was looking at task groups, and when John bills us, because he have to do this training, he does like 0.5. So I was just thinking 0.5. So,
All right, unless I misunderstand, Ms. Calhoun, there are no objections at this point to moving forward with these as they exist, as we heard them read to us today and as we've read them ourselves. Is that accurate? If that's accurate, if I have a motion?
Could I clarify?
Sure.
There are two things that I brought up at the same time, and I think the latter could easily be dealt with procedurally in training with regard to the how the advisory board. But we have a list of exemptions that are being sought to be incorporated, and two of the exemptions that are in the Code of Ethics are not in here. And those are express statutes. And if we don't have them in I just want to make sure that we're cognizant that we're leaving exemptions that exist expressly within the Code of Ethics out of our Code of Ethics.
So what are the two?
They're 112.316. That's the example that I gave where it's the equitable exemption. And there's one for nonprofit employees.
Oh, the nonprofit employees.
112.313 subparen 15. It's called a additional exemption. And, we don't have to have verbatim exactly, we can improve upon 112.313 subsection 15. It's specifically for elected public officers. We could expand it for the purposes of the exemptions that are in this. But we would be remiss if we just left them out in their entirety.
Mr. Comisar, did you have something?
If what we're doing here is merely proposing amendments to the commission to adopt or not, is it worth us having you guys speak again to their attorney about these two potential additional exceptions and see what their temperature is on it and whether they want to have them or don't want to have them, and then we decide which way to go based on kind of that?
Any thoughts, John?
Yeah, it's
If we're just
0.7, I think. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that would be fine. Just so I know, it's 112.316, you said?
Yeah, 316, 112.316,
yes.
and 112.313 subsection
I
15.
got that.
Okay.
16
Yeah, 316.
says construction.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mentioned the advisory opinions because when you look at it, you think, well, this doesn't look like hardly anything. But the Commission on Ethics has applied it again and again, starting with that opinion involving a city employee, to create an equitable exemption when the public employee has no public capacity, oversight, or authority or interaction with the otherwise conflicting contracts, no procurement responsibilities of any ilk. And the activity on the outside, like being a cashier at a convenience store, is completely removed from their responsibilities. We don't have to, we could make the language better. More stringent is our requirement.
And the advisory opinion that we use is um, the last two digits are 19 if you care. But it's the university employee who's an IT worker who
Which was an FSU opinion.
business as a caterer. Yeah, that's a caterer. And they use that same analysis. So the language in and of itself in the statute isn't clear, but they were able to carve out with the, interpretation of the advisory opinion. So, I mean, I can see your point too of making it clearer in this language, if that's something you want to do, but testing the temperature may be even more helpful if we feel like it's going to be controversial.
Well, one thing we have is time right now because we're not going to meet next month.
True.
So I don't know. I'm not going to speak for everybody. If anyone objects, let me know. But I don't think it would be difficult to take it back and get this put in it and put your foot in the water to see what the temperature is like. You've got time to do that, and then bring it back next meeting. Is everybody okay with that? Or
I would even say go as far as if they like it, come back with like an A or B, maybe someone could vote on one that includes it and one that doesn't, and then we can take an action for the next one.
And we
Quick
could,
question.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, is there a time frame as to when we would need to get it to the commission to then put it forth to the voters to vote or for them to vote? Do we have any sort of time frame with them?
No, this is an ordinance only, so it doesn't need to
Okay.
go to the voters.
Okay.
and opinions, we could even, like, if we want to make our equitable exemption in akin with CEO 20-19, Commissioner Calhoun just referred to, which is an FSU opinion, actually, for an FSU employee. Who I believe is married, who is the spouse of a ethics professional, finance professional for an agency. But that language, the actual application of it, maybe we could craft our exemption the way that they actually apply it, because they articulate consistently what they interpret that statutory language to mean, seemingly unmoored from the words that are in 112.316.
So they'll,
It's exciting.
I can send you that, or probably can send you the
You said
advice.
20-19?
Yeah, 20-90.
Okay,
you're right.
yep, I read that.
We have a marching orders.
Right. And I do think it's better to, we have limited bites to the apple with the city commission, so let's make sure we're sending the best product. So that means we keep coming back. I think that's a good way to move forward.
It seems like something they might like because it's really reading common sense into the rule.
Yes.
There will be these situations and they benefit them as well, as any covered individual probably wants the common sense.
Yeah, I think those of you who've been around, we had the misuse was too strict. And we were affecting everybody. The net was way too wide and we did have to go back and get that changed. So we are more stringent than the state. But before it was like, couldn't do it. You couldn't even do your job practically. It was just we went too far. So I think they would be appreciative of that since we've been down that road before.
And the language that the city attorney, in conversing with her with regard to 9E, where it says it's not the intent of this section as to prevent or stymie the business of government, that really is the underpinning of those equitable exemptions.
Okay.
And so I think that there clearly by their desire to include language that kind of speaks to that, giving this board the authority through its ordinances to similarly make that a reality with conflicts of interest that would otherwise be permissible.
Okay.
All set?
Yes.
We have an advisory opinion.
Yes. So I think this is the addendum one. Okay. So this is one of our anonymous advisors. So sometimes we almost play a little telephone game where we got to keep going back and forth to make sure we get our facts right. So initially, when it was written, it was they were going to wear their official firefighter uniform in marketing materials. Turns out that was not the intent. The intent was to actually wear it at the events, and that would I guess in a way, kind of market at the event, but, so we made that change to correct that. This, I think I wrote 3 versions of this, or 3 or 4 the last week. Because we have issues with the local ordinance, we have state statute, and then we have a lot of city policy that this delves into, and I referenced all of those. But we keep the opinion narrowly drawn to just the ordinance. And I think that in the past, sometimes we've offered a non-binding opinion on maybe state statute, maybe on city policy. I know that Mr. Floyd and I discussed and said, you know what, let's reference them. If they're concerned that they're violating the state statute, they could run to the Florida Commission on Ethics and get an opinion. If they are concerned about the outside employment policy or I think it's use of city property, use of city property policy, they could go to the city attorney. And I think we do stress a lot, go to the city attorney on those particular questions. So what we determined here is, I think we did address the 2 issues. One was wearing the uniform, and then 2 was the outside employment. The outside employment, based on the facts that we have, does not appear to be an issue as long as they follow the procedures through the city. We don't go through the first draft listed everything they had to do. We took that out and just said, call the city attorney and they'll tell you. But they have to self-report, and I think there's some forms they do have to file under 706.06 subsection I. The bigger one was the one with the uniforms. And I know Attorney Clanky sent some opinions over the other day, because it is different than the state statute. The state statute has the corruptly term. And so you kind of have to do something wrongful intent. But for us, we don't have the corruptly standard. We have a stricter, a manner inconsistent with your proper duties or something to that effect. And so we don't have to show the corruptly. So this is drafted, I think, differently than it would be if it was to the state statute. But here, based on the information we have, we would say that he can't wear it. It would be a misuse because he'd be providing a special benefit, in this case, to himself, because he would be an owner of the business. Now, use of city property, the policy I mentioned, the 706.06 subsection H, actually has a section dealing with uniforms. And they can wear uniforms in some circumstances. They got to get a supervisor approval, and there's different steps in the policy. We don't go into those details because, again, we're trying to stay in our lane, and that's a city attorney issue. So we do just try to refer them out. So I think there is a scenario where it wouldn't be a misuse if they wore the uniform, if it was approved, it was within what the department, in this case, the fire department, were doing, then it would be proper within the scope of their proper performance, and it wouldn't be an issue. But those aren't the facts that were given us to this time. So I can't remember if I put it, it was in one of my drafts, but I think I said, if this changes, you got to come back to us. But I think that's kind of implied. Right now, I think I used the word divorced from the city. I want to make it real clear. There is a ocean of separation between what this organization is planning to do and what the city is doing as of today. It may not be like that in 6 months, but then they would just have to come back and say, facts have changed. Can I get a new opinion? So that's kind of the thought process through drafting of this. And I think if you have any questions or recommendations, we're happy to hear those.
Any questions from any board members?
In reviewing this, I think it's well written, but I have some concerns because it reaches in conclusion 1 with regard to the use of the uniform, the opposite determination than which has been made by the Commission on Ethics, the Florida Commission on Ethics. In CEO 07-24, and I brought it just in case anybody wants to look at it. The Commission on Ethics specifically addressed the wearing of uniforms by a sheriff in campaigning. Campaigning is a private undertaking. And using it in his commercials, using his uniform was found to not be a misuse of his public resources. This question seems on its face to be easier, but we need to be consistent in our interpretation. Right now, it's using it in activities that involve your private business, which is a private activity, just the same way that campaigning is. What happens when the police chief or a lieutenant has authorization to wear the uniform by his supervisors and is running for elective office? Do we say that he is misusing it by wearing it during campaigning, at campaign functions, in commercials, in pictures?
I have a question about that situation. Was this individual running for the sheriff?
Yes,
And he was the interim sheriff?
I believe he was an incumbent, yeah.
I hope so, because if he had the sheriff's uniform and he wasn't the sheriff,
Oh, yeah,
that
obviously.
would be an issue, but I think that they're apple and orange issues.
Yeah, I kind
I
of
don't
believe
think,
the
I don't
same
think
on
they're,
Is there a way we could have it say that you can't use it for profit? Because it's like, it's different for you're wearing the uniform that you have when you're giving a campaign.
but I think
speech.
that's already implied in the whole scenario where, you know, the sheriff is, that's his uniform. That's 24/7 who he is. If he's the interim sheriff, where this is a totally different situation. They're going to leave the position of being a fire employee, but they're going to continue to wear their uniform at a private function that they're making profit on. I just don't think there's, I understand your point, but I just don't think they're the same issue.
In the analysis, yeah, it's predicated upon a series of cases. Use of your stationery, use of your business cards, 02-13. You know, a series of complaint investigations, finding that those are not, that incidental use is not a misuse of your public position.
But I think to Commissioner Kelly's point, there is no daylight between a sheriff and a sheriff campaigning for sheriff. Like everything that he does is going to be incidental to his role because that is his role. But it will be much different if there was something incidental to a firefighter using his stationery to benefit his camp or his summer camp, his private business. There would be a very clear line in determining whether that was incidental or not. It's unlikely that it would be incidental. I think the difference is in the fact that there is really no daylight between me being sheriff and me campaigning for sheriff versus having a distinctly different private business.
John?
Yeah, so just to make sure we're arguing the right thing, the 0724, it was not the sheriff. It was an employee of the sheriff's office who was a candidate for sheriff, wearing the uniform and equipment with the permission of the sheriff. And then it does reference a few other cases. I think, and this is kind of the point I made, is the corruptly, because these cases all focus a great deal on the term corruptly. The 07-24 goes into the Blackburn case, which we've discussed a number of times, the first DCA case that kind of defines corruptly with wrongful intent, because the statute doesn't really define it all that well. The other opinions that it references, 99-8, in the opinion, it defines public, and then it has a whole thing about corruptly in reaching its conclusion. The 0213 does the same thing, where they have a paragraph on misuse and then another paragraph on corruptly. So I think that's where there's a distinction, is that we don't have that corruptly language. And no, we could always ask to change the ordinance to put that back in, but I know that was a big tug of war at the very beginning. You know, there was a lot of folks that felt strongly we didn't want to just do what the state did. We wanted to be more stringent. And it sounds like this is a great program this gentleman wants to do. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate that somebody gets caught up in that, but maybe there's, you know, something we could work around. And that's, you know, if he keeps coming to us for opinions, we'll see what we can do to help him stay out of trouble.
Yeah, wearing the shirt ain't gonna keep him from being successful.
And also it does say official. Would anything stop him from having a firefighter-themed basketball camp that's just about firefighters, not about Tallahassee firefighters?
Actually, I made that joke yesterday. I said he should have a shirt printed. I'm a Tallahassee firefighter, just printed on his own. I think that would probably be,
They were just it's like
Not a
firefighters.
uniform.
yeah.
It's a profession, not a.
Can I make one note about the fact that we're expressly saying that our ordinance does not have a corrupt intent requirement? We've incorporated word for word the definition of corrupt into our ordinance. The definition of corrupt in the Code of Ethics is in 112.312 subsection 9, and it provides done with a wrongful intent and for the purpose of obtaining or compensating or receive compensation for any benefit resulting from some act or omission of a public servant which is inconsistent with the proper performance of their public duties. Our ordinance says exactly that verbatim, 2-8. So the assertion that we do not have a corrupt intent requirement, this is the language of 2-8. In a manner inconsistent with the proper performance of their public duties, which the official knows or reasonably should know will result in a special privilege benefit exemption. It's the exact same language. So I'm a little uncomfortable saying expressly.
There's
What
actually
we've
two
done
words.
is incorporated the definition of corrupt intent into our ordinance. We've married ourselves more substantively.
There's two words that we didn't put in our ordinance, and that was wrongful intent. That was done by design for that same purpose. We took the rest of the language of the corruptly statute. But then wrongful intent, and I think that's been one of my criticisms, corruptly has a definition. It says wrongful intent, and it doesn't tell you what that is. So then you got to go to the Blackburn case, which was a weird opinion in my mind. But we said, okay, we're not going to go down the road for the wrongful intent. We still wanted to, I think we chose to use the manner inconsistent. So we wouldn't have, I think we had one of the commissioners put something on the social media promoting a business. Hey, this is Commissioner Blank. I'm having some great barbecue today. And the way it was written before, I mean, it would capture something like that. And that was one of the reasons we came back and said, we want to change this. But we didn't go as far as going to the state level. We kept the wrongful intent. So there's still that level of you got to be doing something you shouldn't be doing.
Which would in the future give us the ability to slice those. If the person's campaigning and they want to use their uniform, we can say, oh, well, based on it's not inconsistent. We can still interpret intent. Unless we say out loud, we have no authority that does not require intent. We're saying that expressly in this opinion on page 3. Can I suggest an alternative method for getting to the same place? The concept of authorization is one that is incorporated in this analysis. We mentioned it on page 4. It's critical to these misuse cases that the Commission on Ethics, the Florida Commission on Ethics has issued. Have you sought and obtained authorization for this use? That means it's consistent with the proper performance of your public duties. But that's a factual question. And so we could lean more heavily, instead of saying we don't have as a board under our ordinance the ability to consider any form of intent while we're interpreting if it's consistent with the proper performance of your public duties. Instead of saying that, why don't we say lean more heavily on the existence of the municipal ordinance and specifying that we don't have substantive facts necessary with the authorization, that the authorization would be critical, the obtaining of authorization for the use.
Yeah, I think that's great, but in this case, it wouldn't matter. I mean,
Well, I think we do know he does not have authorization.
okay.
So I think I think
We're
we
acting on
do
a
go back and
specific
forth.
case,
Do we
yes.
want to guide him in that direction? Hey, go back to your supervisor and get authorization, and then you'll be golden. And we chose not to do that because now we got to dive into city policy. And we really didn't want to step on the city manager's toes, because that's their area. So we wanted them to deal with that issue, and if they want to come back, they can. But I know we did struggle with this the last week or so about, how far out of our lane do we get, even if we're trying to bring ourselves back in. And I think we just said, let's avoid the hypotheticals. What are the facts they gave us? We're going to do a judgment based on that today. If you come back tomorrow and the facts have changed, then we'll give you a different opinion, or it could be the same. We don't know.
Yeah,
I think that's a key point here, is that we're dealing with unique circumstances, with a unique situation, with a unique individual. We're making our ruling based on that. I think it's a good opinion as it is. I mean, we could hypothesize forever.
yeah, I think the one thing that he said that's important is that he did ask them, they sent him to us. So it's like they didn't want to answer it. So they sent it to us. So I think what we're working on then is just face value. And so,
I mean, if the circumstances change, like you say, John, he can come back and knock on our door and we'll deal with it based on the circumstances at that time.
yeah, he or she.
Can we soften the language in the paragraph on page 3 that deals with our authority to contemplate? As we've just discussed, we've heard from the attorney, from board counsel, that there's large components of the definition of corrupt that are in our ordinance that we are required to contemplate and apply. And yet we're saying that we have no authority to contemplate intent when we're determining if it's consistent with the proper performance of their public duties. Can we soften that language? I'm fine with the determination that's being made, but we're foreclosing an opportunity for future contemplation by this board of different facts. When the facts come back with the uniform in the campaign, we're just going to say,
Well, that shouldn't happen. I don't think this guy's going to be running for sheriff, do you?
But I think what you're saying is that you concerned that it's precedent that somebody else is going to do something and then say, you guys can't find me in violation because back here on this date, you define something a certain way.
and we're so express with respect to your lack of ability to consider or contemplate intent.
Where is that on page 3?
It's paragraph up. Yeah,
Which paragraph?
second paragraph up from the bottom on
Okay.
page 3.
John, what are your thoughts on that?
Which one is that?
The Tallahassee Ethics Code prohibition
Oh,
of omissions of public position is more stringent than the state law equivalent. Under the state ethics code, a violation requires proof that the individual acted corruptly. In contrast, the local ethics does not include this corruptly condition, but rather that the conduct is inconsistent with an individual's official duties, effectively creating a strict standard of liability that does not require intent. So it doesn't require that we go that far and for us to take action.
We are contemplating intent. We're finding this dispositive because it's for pecuniary purposes. That's intent. And our ordinance incorporates the vast majority of the corrupt intent definition. I feel like there's a less is more approach here.
I think this discussion has some history. I know it has some history.
And I'm not aware of that history.
Yeah, I know.
So it's helpful just to hear it. But maybe we could just go the Tallahassee code, the first sentence, and then just say, under the Tallahassee code, we focus more specifically on whether it is inconsistent with the proper performance of the public duties. Period.
Is that really going to change the opinion, John? It's removing that one part of the sentence.
Say that one more time, just that last sentence and that,
Keep the first sentence in that paragraph and then all the rest of those strike, and then just say, under the local code or under the ordinance, we focus instead on the proper, whether the use of the resource is consistent with the proper performance of their public duties.
so that first paragraph, or the first sentence in that paragraph stays. The Tallahassee Ethics Code prohibition on the misuse is more stringent than the state law equivalent.
Correct.
Okay. And then delete the rest and put under the local code.
Correct.
Say it again.
Under the local ordinance, the analysis focuses instead on whether the use of a public resource is inconsistent with the proper performance of their public duties, one's public duties.
Replacing.
And then the facts that come after it are sound and have resonance in the case by case approach.
You guys are the wordsmiths. When I look at it as it is, I just don't see that it's a problem, the way he's worded it. I think John's worded it fine. It's just a matter of preference, I guess.
It's the difference between in a legal document saying, we do not have the authority as a board under this ordinance to contemplate intent of any kind. Or if we do.
Yeah, I didn't read.
see it that way.
I just saw it saying we don't.
I think this says, look, he could be doing this corruptly. We don't know. He could be doing this innocently, but it's a problem. I mean, to say that you have to show that it's corrupt. Maybe they're totally innocently walking into it saying, hey, I'd like to make a little extra money. And that, little kids like firefighters, and he may be innocently doing that, but it doesn't matter. If you're I think he shouldn't be wearing the uniform and to the benefit of his own personal business. I think wearing his firefighter shirt or outfit, it does imply some sort of, that the city endorses that. But I'm not getting tied up with that second paragraph up. I'm just thinking that in contrast, we don't care if he's corrupt or is not corrupt. He could have a very innocent meaning, but still that doesn't affect the end. It doesn't affect the outcome, even if he innocently wanted to do that.
And I tend to agree with the outcome. The words effectively creating a strict standard of liability that does not require intent. That means that in the future, when a city employee gives out their business card and some out there in the wild, and they're not on the clock or what have you, that could be a misuse. If they give a letter of endorsement for somebody for a program outside, that's an opinion that has been issued by the Commission on Ethics, considering intent, saying it's not a misuse of your official stationery to endorse someone for a college program at FSU. In this, if it is a strict standard of liability, any use of a public resource for anything that doesn't deal with your public employment is misuse. Period.
I think we've given an endorsement like the one you just gave. Given an advisory opinion consistent with the state, like the one you just gave on, because we had a city commission member who was using their stationery to endorse somebody for something.
And did you say that it was based on your interpretation of their intentions? Because it is use.
Well, I say that, I don't know what we did. I just know we approved it.
It is use for a private purpose.
Would it be okay if just the very final line was stricken? It just ends at official duties, period, rather than official, comma, effectively creating a strict standard of liability that does not require intent? Because I'm saying if it gets us to the same end and it makes you more comfortable with the language, I don't care if the language is changed.
Yeah.
As long as it's.
Well, that's why I asked John, is effectively the interpretation of the opinion is what matters most and what it does. If it's in or out, is what I'm asking you, John, does it make a difference?
I think,
In your legal opinion?
I think what the language you just proposed, I think probably gets us where we need to be. Just stop after the word duties.
Make that a period?
Sure.
I would still argue that we have 95% of the corrupt intent definition incorporated directly into our statute. So to say that we don't have any part of the corrupt definition is not factually accurate. Under the state ethics code, a violation requires proof of corrupt intent. In contrast, the local ethics code does not include corruptly as a condition. Almost all of the words in the definition of corrupt are in our ordinance, with the exception of 3 words. I'm just very familiar with the definition of corruptly. And so I see it, I see the definition in there.
So should we say, in contrast, the local ethics code does not verbatim include this corruptly condition, but rather the condition? Does that verbatim include?
Beautiful.
John's contemplating, we'll just say historically, there's been a lot of discussion on, especially my first few years here, there's a lot of discussion on corruptly versus what we have. And what we have was massaged. And the authors vehemently did not want corrupt.
Because they didn't like the word or because they thought it was too high of a standard?
They threatened his job when we were talking about
But
it.
see, that goes to the fact that this board cannot pass less stringent standards in our code than state law. We can't be less stringent.
But this is
Saying that we're less stringent,
more stringent.
I would argue, is not what has happened. I read this and I can still say our code is more stringent than the Florida Code of Ethics.
Yeah, I thought that's, we said it's more stringent.
Mhm.
The third paragraph.
But if we're saying we don't consider intent of any kind, we're saying out loud that it's less stringent.
No, I thought we were saying we don't
We
require.
don't require it.
We don't
I'm not saying we won't consider it.
require intent.
It doesn't have a requirement that is present in state law.
It's not state law.
Right, I think taking corruptly is requiring an extra step that we don't require. So that makes this more stringent. Because where you could likely get grace at the state level because you didn't meet the interpretation of corrupt, we don't care about that. Even if you didn't have that necessary intent, you could still be found engaging in misconduct. So I would argue that it's still a more stringent standard. And like some said, I don't see the idea that we're removing our ability to review intent just by this language. But is verbatim and then the period okay, John, you think, or?
Where would that be?
So in talking about this last sentence in the second paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about putting a period after duties. And you
Yes.
said that was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to be more accurate, to say that the local ethics code does not verbatim include this corruptly condition. Just add the word verbatim. Because Attorney Clanky is saying that, we include 95% of the.
Well, I think we say that in that, it says, in contrast, the local ethics code does not include this corruptly condition, but rather the conduct is inconsistent with an individual's official duties, period. Would we want to add the verbatim language there.
The word
The local
verbatim,
ethics code does not include this corruptly condition.
so it would say the local ethics code does not verbatim include this corruptly condition.
Okay.
Because it's not verbatim. It's not every word, but it's some words.
Yeah.
So it's just more accurate language, I guess, for the sentence.
Sure.
And it doesn't change the conclusion, but I think
I think
it,
it'd be fine.
And then duties has like after official duties, period.
Yeah.
That way, the memo, the use of the official stationery to recommend people for private things is still permissible.
So you've got,
Understand.
John, I'm sorry,
But under this,
John, you've got, on the second sentence, you're scratching the second sentence, correct? Under the state ethic code, a violation requires proof of that individual.
that's okay. We
No,
can
we're leaving that.
still have that in
Leaving
there.
that, we're only scratching the last, the section after duties,
Correct.
and we're adding a word called verbatim.
Right.
Between not and include.
Right.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. John, you got it, man.
Okay.
Man. Thank you, Mr. Calhoun, for summarizing that for us.
Yes, excellent.
So then the next question is, because we made those changes here and we're all comfortable, then we can go ahead and vote to approve this?
Prove it with this change.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft opinion as modified pursuant to our discussion.
Okay, I have a
Second.
motion, second. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, Dwight, you're going to talk about the annual ethics refresher training.
Yes, let me start off by saying that we just handed it over to the city, so you can't change anything.
Okay. Do I have a motion to end the meeting?
This, we have spent months, many hours working on this course, and we did. We just handed it over just before I came here today, and made the final changes. It's a very comprehensive course. If you look at the ordinance, it really requires two courses. One for one set of people who are taking a refresher, and then another set of people that's taking a comprehensive course. So what we did was combine this into one course. So they get their review and they get their comprehensive instruction at the same time. You do get to see my face and hear me talk, and you got that last time, and you got it this time. And I just want to acknowledge people at the bottom, and you see a list of people. Ms. Calhoun edited the portion where I spoke, and that whole idea, I asked sitting chair, Chief Kelly, if you could teach anything you want, what would you teach? He sent me his PowerPoint. I did a little research, a little literature review, and came up with what we have. I sent it to Ms. Calhoun because she is just a sharp editor, and I trust whatever she sends me. And she made a few edits. And then all the people here reviewed it. Ms. Clinky, whenever I needed a response, I got a response, which I really appreciated. And it broadened the perspective from a state standpoint. So I had Attorney Clinky on state, I had John on the Tallahassee Ethics Code, and I had City Attorney on city policy. So we were able to look at all of those and put together a very comprehensive course. And all of these people put a lot of time and effort. Ms. Natalie Jackson, who is an employee in growth management, one of the scenarios was hers. One of the scenarios was Ashani Pettis in housing community. And a lot of what is in the course came from our advisory opinions. And I'm hoping that from this course, we'll get advisory opinions. People are telling me that it's engaging, that they're learning new stuff. And I'm finding they're actually paying attention to it and not just going through it. So the biggest thing, I will probably get emails saying, this question was wrong because I got it wrong and I was right. I always get those every year. So, because people want to make 100.
Are there attorneys in the class?
There will be attorneys taking the training, yes. But, you know, Tasker put in a lot of work, and I usually tease her about it all, but a lot of what you see graphically is her design. She helped keep me sober and on track and help keep things clear. And she's learning instructional design. And my intent is when I'm gone, she'll be able to keep this kind of training going. So she's learning instructional systems design, which is far above what we hired for. But she's learning that she can do training. So we're elevating her position, which I'll be coming back to talk about that in a few months.
No, you will.
Because we want to reward that. But this is a list of people who put in a lot of time. The other is Director Simpson, who's the director of HR. She put in a lot of time in the end. She polished it and we've been very open. Then there's a young lady that I want to mention. Her name is Brittany Walker. She's doing a lot of the lyrical work. She's the person that's going to make this all happen. She's the person that's going to deal with all the people who get confused about what they're supposed to be doing. She's the person who's going to follow up and make sure everybody takes the training. She's the person that helped push this and get it finalized. So I appreciate her effort there. I'm also submitting this to the board. Every year you're supposed to take training. And, you know, I just decided that this would be good for the board because it kind of puts in perspective all the different things out there and you see the gaps. One of the things I heard from personnel, they asked me, they were like, well, this is in the state, but we don't have anything. And the answer was yes, that is correct. That's why we're trying to make some recommendations. So it allowed people to see some of the holes in their stuff. So hopefully it'll help with that. But I just wanted to present the report, let you know it's done. Jessica and I are going on vacation. We'll let you know when we come back. Because we've been working, she's been working like 3 a.m. I get up 4, 5, 6 a.m. Whatever it is. We put in a lot of work, a lot. You know, we're glad to get this one off our desk. So that's it.
What I saw in the finished product, what I saw in your efforts was, you know, amazing. Oscar, deserve a round of applause for that. Now, about the raise, no.
0.5.
And that's everything on the agenda?
No, we have agenda item 11.
Oh, there it is, I'm sorry.
We also have to provide training in there. You have training for elected officials and the aides, and particularly, we're providing special training for the aides. Because we can't take what the elected officials are taking and suffice. So John had put together a course and you get to see it in the packet. And he will be delivering that in a 2-hour session in July to all of the aides, to the mayor and city commission members. So I just want to let you know, because, you know, a lot of work goes into this stuff. And, you know, some people may think we don't have anything to do because we don't get a lot of complaints, but it's nonstop. No. Just want to let you know what John's doing. Yes, you're.
Ms. Tasker, do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
None.
Any other thoughts or comments from any board members? Do I have a motion?
Before you do that, I'll tell you one thing. Some months ago, you all approved for me to do some outside stuff with my music business. And I'm not sending it to you, but I'll tell you, because I'm not announcing it until Friday, but if you go on YouTube and look for a young lady named Glacia Robinson, a song called I Promise. She's heard it. Because I'm doing something, I'm donating part of whatever I get to FAMU, and she's helping me with that. But if you go on YouTube, look for Glacia Robinson, and I promise you'll see that I'm not doing anything to embarrass the board.
What is Miss Robinson's first name again?
Glacia, Glacia. And she is an international artist. I'm honored to.
We're gonna be losing you to the big time.
I don't think so.
You have on a City of Tallahassee shirt?
Well, when I announce it, I just have to make sure the city is not involved. But I just want to mention that. Thank you.
What's the name of the song again?
I promise. And I wrote it.
Beautiful. Do I have a motion to dismiss the meeting? Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good 2-month break, everybody.